Hey guys, Mike here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to fire off all your abilities really quickly so you can output extremely high amounts of damage and just start comboing like a crazy person. So the first tip I have to give to you is always be looking at the bottom right that has these icons that are toggling. Now, I don't mean the actual quadrant, like this part. Look at the tiny icon here that's showing all 6 abilities that you have for your whole loadout. So you can see in this bottom right-hand corner, I have a red skill, a green skill, a purple skill, a blue skill, a cyan skill, and a red skill. The reason you have to look at this constantly is because that tells you what abilities are off of cooldown. And the secret to max damage output is using your abilities off of cooldown as soon as possible. Because sword attacks and magic burst attacks are never going to do more damage than your icon abilities. So let's talk about the first icon slot. So what I reserve for the first icon slot are skills that I need quickly, like that need to be used on reaction. So for example, that's why I have Garuda on my first slot, because right when I get to 50% stagger, you don't have that much time to do a deadly takedown. Heat Wave is used to counter projectiles, and I need it on a moment's notice, right? Because when the enemy starts firing a fireball at me, I need to quickly bust it out immediately. Like I can't be toggling through my icon abilities trying to find Heat Wave in time. It needs to be immediately there. The next is Wicked Wheel, because I just like it. It bursty qualities, and it's good for comboing. So it's nice to have on my sort of default icon slot. Next is what I like to think of as the auxiliary on reaction abilities. So for example, so for me, I have Bahamut and Wings of Light. I like to use when the enemy starts to bust out a long mechanic, and I can just quickly switch to Bahamut and then on reaction and just start dodging abilities right away. But it's sort of a lower priority than Garuda, because Garuda is more time sensitive. Bahamut, I have time to just switch to my second icon slots. And again, the abilities I have here are abilities that I don't really need to use on reaction. Like Heat Wave, I need to use on reaction, right? Or so I'm not going to get it. But like Pile Drive and Mesmerize, these are just skills that, I need quickly, but I don't need as urgently as these ones. When you think about it, Pile Drive is on a 38-second cooldown. So, it's not going to be up as frequently as like Heat Wave. And on the third slot, I have abilities that I don't use often. So for example, Giga Flare, the ultimate Bahamut ability, this is on a greater than 2-minute cooldown. So, you're really not using it that often. And that's useful because if I'm usually toggled to slots 1 or 2, then it's not a big deal that that it takes me a little bit more time to get to slot 3 so I can access Giga Flare. Same thing with Ignition. Ignition is more of a like a long skill. I'm not going to be using it in the heat of battle that often because it just takes so long, especially compared to Heat Wave and Wicked Wheel. So it's fine that I put it on my third slot because, it's just farther from my default slot. So the very first thing I want to talk about is this concept of having a default slot, right? It's sort of like your neutral. It's what you're always returning to. And for me, it's Garuda and Deadly Embrace with Heat Wave and Wicked Wheel. So when I'm in battle, I'm not trying to just toggle through my skills constantly and I have no rhyme or reason. I'm always returning to my default, which is first skill slots, right? With Garuda here. So say I use a Mesmerize, which is on my second slot, bottom line. After I use it, I'm already toggling back to my default on Garuda. The reason I do that is for my next point. The last tip I have for you is always be looking at the bottom right. You know what attack is coming. You actually don't have to stare at the center of the screen. It's actually more important to look at the bottom right. You can use sound cues as well. I can still do a magic burst just off of sound cues. I can immediately see when my abilities are coming back on, and I can start planning in the back of my head, like, okay, I can see maybe Mesmerize is coming back on, and so is Heat Wave, so maybe I can do a Mesmerize Heat Wave combo or something like that. I'm planning it, pre-planning ahead, all while trying to fight the enemy and dodge their attacks and stuff. So once you have already loaded information from the actual fight in the center of the screen, that's when you can shift your attention to this the bottom right, where you're looking at this 2x3 array of your abilities, so you can see what you can start firing off. And, you know, just processing all this information is already a ton of things to do. But the thing that needs your most attention when it comes to firing off a lot of abilities is what's going on in this bottom right. 65% of my attention is looking at the bottom right of the screen. Like I said, once I already know what's going on in the center of the screen, I immediately shift my attention to the bottom right because I want to know what abilities are off of cooldown and what order I can fire them and what kind of combos I can start doing. So if you follow these tips, you will become a master at firing off abilities and starting to do very extravagant combos. Anyways, I hope these tips helped you understand how to get good at firing off combos and abilities really quickly. And thanks for watching.